Hello and welcome to Crafting with Bryn. This is our quarantine edition. Today I'm going to be taking a Cotes de Roses bottle and turning it in to a rocks glass. These bottles are really quite special because they're shaped like rose petals on the bottom. They'd be great for if you're going on a date. You can present the bottle upside down just like a rose. When it's filled with a rosé or their red wine, it's actually quite beautiful. Things you're going to need to complete today's project is you're going to need a Pyrex or a steam kettle. You're going to want to get water to a temperature that is steaming hot where it would fog your glasses, but not at any sort of boil, just below a boil. You're going to need one bucket or container that you can get an ice bath going in. You're going to want to start out with one of your bottles in that ice bucket bath so that all the molecules begin to line up. And that way you get, when you score the glass and put that initial cut that goes the whole way around, you'll get a nice even break. That is the point behind the ice bath. There's a lot of videos out there where folks do glass cutting and they do not do this one step, and I have found that by doing this, I will have 4 out of 5 bottles without any fissures or breaks that aren't where I actually scored. The other thing you'll need is a glass cutting rig, whether it's what I have here or a handheld tool with this little glass cutting wheel on it. The key thing is when you do your cut is to never have that wheel go back over where you've already scored your glass. That can damage your diamond edge wheel. The other thing you'll need is a paper towel and some 240 grit sandpaper to give that satin finish to the edge of your glass so that you have a nice mouthfeel and also so that it won't cut those that you present these cups to when you're done. All right, so step 1, you remove your bottle from the ice bath. It should feel cold to the touch, not cool, but cold. You want to dry it off, give it a nice wipe down so that it's dry and easier to handle when you put it into the rig. I use a cork in the rig so that the neck of the bottle is well balanced once it's on the cutting wheel. You want to ensure that that cutting wheel does not go back over your initial scoring cut because that will damage the diamond edge. Now for me, I have to get down low so that I can watch the cut, because I want to make sure that I don't overlap my score. And again, you want to keep a nice, firm, even pressure without pressing too hard. We're just lightly scoring that edge of the bottle. Now, that little audible cracking that you heard, not only was that the score, but there at the very end where it got a little bit louder, that let me know that I had just met up with my other score line so that we have a clean score that goes the whole way around. Now that'll be slightly sharp, so you don't want to use your bare fingers on it. Then I place that back into the cold water to get everything realigned. And I have my steaming water waiting to go. This doesn't have to sit in nearly as long this go around. This is more just to get it a little bit back into the chill. Then over a sink or a bucket, there's a seam on both sides of the bottle. You want to start on one of your seams. Hopefully everyone can see that seam. And I'll set the base of the bottle into the sink so that there's less pressure on it. And I start slowly pouring the hot water on my crack. Once we have a few seconds, you start rotating the bottle along that scored edge. The heat's going to cause a little bit of expansion. That scoring line is going to become much easier to see. When we get to the other side where there's a seam, again, I want to give ample amount of time over that. And then I place it back into the water bath. I'll use one of my already existing rocks glasses to keep a little pressure over the top to keep it well submerged. And I'll begin to prep some more hot water. This can take up to 3 times, but this slow go will allow you the best results. You're not going to have the glass overexpand too quickly. And again, the biggest thing you want to avoid with this sort of thing are those fissures or breaks in the glass that would render what your project would be unusable. So when we go for the second pass, I pull the bottle clean out. Now, as you can see, the scoring line is now highly visible from the stresses of going from hot to cold. Again, I'm going to go back to where the seam is in the bottle. Just slowly pour my hot water on. And we get a nice clean break. Now that edge is going to be highly sharp until you sand it down. So you don't want to touch that edge without gloves on or some other form of PPE. The top of the bottle would make for a great funnel, or if someone that you know has a wedding coming up, this would be a great way to hold flowers, keeping all the stems together. And you could just kind of fit a cloth down in there, put your flowers down in, and your bridesmaids or bride would have a nice holder. Okay, so now you have your raw edge after that nice clean break. You just want to make sure that there's no fissures anywhere as you examine it. But you will notice, if you can see on camera here, there's lots of little micro pitting, and that is a very sharp edge on both sides. With the 240 grit sandpaper, the first thing I do are my outer edges. You don't have to be too thorough on this part, just a nice light sanding the whole way around, rotating the glass, and doing kind of a half moon action with your sandpaper. And it just kind of deburrs or de-sharpens that edge. Makes it a little bit safer to handle the glass when you get into your full edge sanding here in a minute. And I'm going to do the same thing on that inner edge. And if you haven't noticed, I'm now wearing the blue gloves, just a little added PPE to give myself some protection. And now I can feel the difference in that edge, and it almost feels rounded. Then I'll set the cup onto the counter plate. And work a section of it the whole way around, getting rid of any sharp burrs that might be sticking up. And you start to see almost a frosted edge appear. Then I'm going to come back in and just work one section at a time. So you're probably going to spend about 15 minutes per half of your glass. So this is about a 30-minute process. When we get closer to the end, we'll come back. Okay, so we've had about 30 minutes of sanding on this particular glass. And if you look at the edges, you can see there's some areas that look a little bit shiny and areas that look very frosted. Those areas that are shiny are slightly recessed, but are now smooth to the touch after being sanded. Very safe to the feel. I'm gonna go ahead, give it a little rinse under some lukewarm water, and then I'm gonna put it into a warm bath to help loosen up those labels. At this point, you'd be safe to take off your gloves. And it doesn't have to sit in the warm water very long, as we're just trying to get the glue to lose some of its adhesion. One tool that I didn't mention at the beginning, because it's not really required but will make life a little bit easier, is just a simple plastic scraper to get that label to start coming up. Now, if you're lucky, all the glue will release at the same time. The longer you leave it in that hot water bath, the better this will be. If there's any glue that's left at the end of this, just use a greenie or some other slightly abrasive sponge surface, something that won't scratch your glass. And that'll get the rest of that glue off. And again, you're going to want to do that under warm water. I recommend going to the dollar store for those, because this glue will get down into the little bits of your abrasive surface and not make it good for doing any other dishes. So you can see that scraped off relatively easy, but I have quite a bit of glue left on there because I didn't let it sit in the bath long enough. I'm gonna go ahead and let it sit for a minute, get my spigot running, and grab a simple end of its life abrasive pad. And with just a little bit of elbow grease, that label's gonna start coming off. All that glue that was left on there. So I added a little bit of soap for this final step, just because I had quite a bit of that glue adhesive still on there. But under some hot water with the soap helps it to release just a little bit better. And as you can see, comes right off. And when we're done, you just want to keep checking it to make sure you got all that glue. And then when we're done, you have a nice, beautiful rocks glass with a safe edge. As you can see, using a little bit of camera magic, I went ahead and did the remainder of my bottles. Went 4 for 4 today with no issues. All nice clean cuts. Again, if you had a wedding coming up, you would have wonderful flower holders. These also work to be used upside down in a planter. You can fill it with water and it'll slow trickle that water down into your planter. Lots of things you can do for that if you're into that second life of an object for recycling. And with that, I'm gonna make a drink. So at the end of a job well done, coming to you from quarantine, hoping we don't have 500 more days of this, I give you a salute with a wonderful glass of scotch.